Welcome to another episode of Tech Unhinged, where technology meets human. Today, we have an extraordinary guest with us. He's a Super Bowl champion, multi sport athlete, entrepreneur, and now a leading voice at the intersection of AI, health tech, and space innovation. From the American National Football League to John Hopkins to collaborating with NASA, he's been redefining human performance in ways not many have done. A huge welcome to the show, Femi. Let's kick things off with your journey. What led you from NFL to AI and space technology?
Yeah, thanks, Rabia. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Um, Man, I think I've always been a dreamer. Yeah, and as you know, it was my birthday yesterday, and as Pisces, we tend to be dreamers.
Yeah.
And I know that's not a scientific analysis. That's more of an artful one. But I've always been a kid. I've always loved science fiction. I'm a big Trekkie. I'm a big Star Wars fan. I love Neil deGrasse Tyson. I've always loved astronomy and astrophysics. And I've always imagined myself, traveling the universe or, being on Mars with the rovers and looking at the different things that uh, the different data points and items that can give us insights to the evolution of the universe and the evolution of our own species. So, my dreams aren't just rooted in kind of our evolutionary biology, but just kind of like where do we come from? Why are we here? Do we live in a multiverse? These are things I've always thought about as a kid, and I know these are not normal thoughts for most young kids, but I've always thought about it that way because anything that at the end of the day, I'm a consumer of information, and all the information that I'm exposed to moves me in one direction or another. But before I make any conclusions, it always leads me to a thought experiment, and the more information I get, the more sharp and scalpel like I can be about my analysis. So, my journey as an athlete, to San Diego State, where I played Division I football, to the NFL, where I played 11 years and won a Super Bowl with the Ravens, and then Johns Hopkins and NASA, and kind of building these AI LLM based platforms and using computer vision and neural networks to provide people insight that is at your fingertips from your home at low costs. It all started with that little kid as a dreamer. It really did. At least listening to Stephen Hawking, listening Carl Sagan. I was a Carl Sagan fan as a real young kid. I know this is real nerdy stuff that I'm getting into. I haven't said Carl Sagan's name in a really long time, but that was my inspiration as far as how I got to where I am now. Obviously, there's a lot of other people that you wouldn't know about, and a lot of athletes that your audience might not know about, that have motivated me and inspired me. But it's an amalgamation of different people with a lot of different backgrounds, a lot of different diverse backgrounds that have poured into me, whether indirectly or directly. And that's kind of what's made me who I am in regard to the way I approach things and think about things. So,
What was that one defining moment that set you on this particular path as a child?
yeah, so I would say that, being an athlete, you are in charge of your own performance, right? And especially at the lower levels of high school here in the US. And I actually went to junior college before I went to San Diego State. Everything I did, there was no person to wake me up. There was no person to tell me about supplementation. There was no one to tell me about recovery. There wasn't anyone to tell me about, workout planning and how to balance being on a track and doing speed work versus being in the weight room. And then also the field work that's required to play football. I went out of my way to come up with a game plan. And of course, I was influenced and guided by people, but I had to seek them out. They didn't seek me out asking me, how can I help you? It was more like, hey, I have dreams, I have goals. Can you help me find this? Can you help me figure this out? Can you help me understand this? And it's all just different data points on the larger path to where I got to. And what I would say is, and I bring this up because on a fundamental level, the thing that separates me from probably most athletes and most people in general, I said I'm an information consumer. Well, I'm an information seeker. You know what I mean? I'm not what you would call a true believer of anything. I do not follow anybody blindly. I do not assume anything. I seek information. And as an information seeker, I will then make my decisions based on the data and information. And I know that there can be a qualitative component to assessing quality, value, and decision making. I understand there's a quantitative component. And I do understand with the world that we live in, there's a lot of people that feel their way through, or they use the word faith. I'm not that person, unfortunately. That's not who I am. It doesn't mean that I don't believe in things that are hard to touch or hard to explain. Of course I do. I have a very spiritual side to me. But when it comes to performance, and when it comes to influencing people, and when it comes to building and creating things, you can't just say, oh, you just have to believe me or you just have to trust me. That's not good enough. And so for me, understanding that my performance and my opportunities were solely rooted in my ability to take information in, process it, improve it, and iterate on it for myself is really what got me on the path post NFL retirement, to where I own my own private training facility. I became a certified nutritionist and a certified personal trainer. And I worked on the floor of a gym, a high-end gym at that, for 5 years. And I learned what people liked. I learned what people needed, but I also kept an eye to technology. I also kept an eye to things, the evolution of activity trackers like a Fitbit and a Garmin and an Apple Watch. I was on the very ground floor of one of the first activity trackers from Fitbit. I was a Fitbit beta tester. And I knew that forever things would change once we started bringing in data and understanding how that personalized data was a measure or a tracking of my performance. And I knew around 2012, 2013 that I did not want to work in a brick and mortar fitness business anymore. I wanted to be on the technological side, which then prompted me to sell the business in 2014, enroll at Johns Hopkins in the fall of 2014. And I used HealthReel, which is ultimately the platform and app that I ended up building, as my capstone project. And that capstone project was going to be based on a vertically integrated, holistic digital health assessment that gave people insights on their mental health, their metabolic performance, their body composition, healthy weight guidance, healthy body composition guidance, disease risk information. And mind you, this didn't exist when I came up with this idea. Like, some of this stuff didn't exist at all. Like, I didn't have a trail to follow. I didn't have a roadmap to follow. I had to break things and make mistakes, spend money along the way. But I knew in my mind, based on the fact that I've been in some type of fitness as a consumer, as an athlete, as a practitioner, and a technologist since I was 15 years old. That's decades. I've been in this space for decades. So I think that the vision that I had and the path that I've chosen is an aggregate of every single data point, micro and macro, that has guided me on an intuitive level as to what the future is going to look like. And I could not have predicted ChatGPT. I could not have predicted DeepSeek. I could not have predicted what NVIDIA would do, moving from gaming to the picks and shovels of AI. But once I saw the roadmap and I saw it coming, it's not far off from the vision that I had. I didn't know how we would get there, but I knew that AI would revolutionize our life on a daily basis, and it's doing it now. And I think there's a lot of space for AI to revolutionize things in fitness and in healthcare. It really hasn't done it yet. I feel like it's very early innings. And obviously we have autonomy and robotics and all these other things that are happening, but AI is there's going to come a point in time, everyone's going to have a robot, everyone's going to have a co-pilot, whether it's on their phone, in their ear, on their watch, telling them like, hey, you need another 5 minutes of your heart rate in this heart rate zone to hit your target. Don't eat that food. I see that you're at this restaurant. Order that food. It's going to be able to literally know exactly where you are and what you're doing and help you make better decisions. I have no fear of this. People have fear of AI because they don't understand what they have fear of what they don't know. They have fear of watching Terminator 2 in the Matrix. Like they let their imagination get away from them because they haven't taken the time to study what AI is going to do for us going forward. Now, is there some scenario where AI becomes sentient and does crazy things? Maybe, but AI is going to do whatever we teach it. And at the end of the day, we already live with that. We all have children. We all have kids, right? We all have people that probably look up to us. We're already doing that. We already have real people in the real world that do surreptitious things and bad things. We already know that. So that's something that we're going to have to reckon with in regard to what AI can or can't be and the threat that it will be. But my intuition tells me that whatever negative downside there is to AI and the evolution of AI, the upside is multiples larger in regard to what it can do for life-changing things around cancer and diabetes and, mental health and our obesity epidemic in the US.
So, Femi, since it all started from the sort of National Football League and your entire, your experience there and how you became an athlete. So, how did that particular experience shape your understanding of human performance, if we talk about it comprehensively?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go back to, junior college before I even go to the NFL because it's all a continuous, um, roadmap. Like it's all connected. And you make do with what you have, right? And the higher levels that you get to, going from junior college to a Division I program at San Diego State to the NFL, you know, the the amenities improve, right? And the athletes improve and the support improves. The crazy thing is, and it's not really crazy because I think this happens in every single business segment, and athletics is not outside of this. The people with the most support perform the best, right? But you've got to get to that place where you have the support and you've got to prove to people in some odd way that you've done it without the support and that the extra additional investment in you, whether mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, or capital intensive, is going to somehow enhance your performance and enhance the ROI on that investment. Like that's a very simple mathematical equation. And I think at the NFL level, what you learn is that a lot of kids came from where I came from, poverty. I lived in Lagos, Nigeria for a number of years. No running water, no electricity. My dad's from Nigeria. My mom is Irish. My mom's Irish Catholic from Chicago. My dad's from Nigeria. And so, for a number of years, we had very little. And then when we left Nigeria, we moved into a housing project in Chicago, Illinois. We went from one ghetto to another one, and only through time and education and just kind of slowly climbing the socioeconomic ladder, my family and I able to get from where we started to kind of where I am now, which has still been climbing, right? And I bring this up because what you realize is that gifted people can be found anywhere, but to recognize their gift, you have to invest in them, right? And we got lucky numerous times along the way. People invested in us, organizations, schools invested in us. And the athletes that I played with at the NFL level, which are some of the best athletes on the planet, some of the biggest, strongest, fastest, most intuitive athletes that you'll ever meet, they are in the NFL. This is a fact. And what I realized is many of them come from the same place that I came from, and a lot of them had to figure it out without the support that they probably needed at an earlier age. But even without the support, they found a way to overcome and persevere. And so, what I've learned about professional athletes at the NFL level, and this can go for any sport, honestly, any sport, any high level professional sport. Athletes are resilient for the most part. Athletes are battle tested for the most part. Athletes understand what it means to be committed and grind. There's always going to be these outliers that were just God-given ability, and sometimes those guys never, and those ladies never see their full potential because they were given too much too early, too easily. Right? What makes bliss amazing is the trauma that comes before it, because that trauma is a learning lesson. That adversity is a learning lesson. And what I've realized is that most successful people, most, not all, but most, have been through some adversity, some trauma, something that's really tested their mettle, and they've overcome it, and they take those learnings and they've applied it and moved it forward, and they're better for it. They're better athletes for it. They're better people for it. Very seldom do you have people that are born with a silver spoon in their mouth that are successful. And if they are, a lot of times it's luck. Unfortunately, it is, because, or it's just the fact that they came from some money and opportunity, and they've just taken advantage of that. And if you look at the environment that we live in, and I live in the U.S., so you know what we're dealing with here when it comes to leadership, right? It's very sad.
Yeah.
We don't have good examples in some cases, and unfortunately, people are believers, or they're not seekers, right? And so, not to go off on a tangent, but I think you know where I'm going with it. But to kind of circle back to your point about NFL athletes, we are resilient, we are battle tested, we understand that only through trauma and adversity can there be bliss. That's the toughest thing that I want you to know, or most important thing I want you to know about human performance in professional athletes, because if you can't learn from mistakes and adversity, you can't be a professional athlete.
So, this brings me to this point that how we're going to be talking a lot about, human performance today and its intersection with technology. So, which brings me to this next question that, Femi, what common patterns do you see in how data enhances human performance, which is across health, sports, and space technology?
Yeah, I think that data has to be easily accessible, right? It has to be objective, and it has to be actionable. Like just having data to have data to make it, like, there's artful data and there's useful data. You know what I mean? Like, we can create these bar charts and have these different colors showing all these different things, but that's nice. But if the art doesn't motivate me to do something or doesn't tell me something actionable, it's useless, right? And so for me, when I look at data, of course, I want the art component. Art is marketing, art is stickiness, art is adoption, right? Art is LTV in regard to data. That's what it is. It has to move people in some way. But if it's just art and it's not actionable, then it's just a pretty thing to look at. And what I see when it comes to information, and especially when it comes to some of the hardware in fitness, is it something that I need to look at every day? What I love about Fitbit, and I'm not paid by Fitbit, by the way, I just feel like as far as a wearable goes, when you open it up, I have my sleep score every day. I have my REM sleep. I have my resting heart rate. I know my heart range. I know how recovered I am. I know how many calories I burned. It tracks all the things that are meaningful to me in regard to how I approach my day and the actions that I take based on my scores in the morning. Is today going to be a high output activity day, or is it going to be more of a rest day or a lower output activity day? How many calories did I eat yesterday? Am I on target? Am I above it? Am I below it? And HealthReel, my platform, my tool, covers some of these things that I think Fitbit even misses. There is a fully comprehensive, fully integrated vision for digital health that I feel on the consumer level that I can build. And there is obviously an LLM or a chat GPT component, a co-pilot in there as well. I think all these things will lead to better long-term health outcomes, lower healthcare costs, less sick people. But the data and the information has to be artful, but it also has to be actionable.
This was very insightful. And there is a certain level of self satisfaction when you get to see everything on your wristband. I am an Apple Watch user myself.
Yep.
Then, when you get busy with your work, it would just tell you to stand up. End of the day, you can sort of see how many steps you've taken. So in this busy world where corporates get most of your time, so it's just nice to tell you, that you've got to take care of yourself too.
So my 3 kids, my brother's 3 kids, my daughter's 2 kids, but I'm the oldest of the siblings, and my kids are the oldest of the. There's obviously some mixing of the ages based on when we had our kids, but I had my child first, right? So my daughter and my son are basically, and my brother's daughter, the three of them all were born in about a 2-year window. My son's 18, my niece is 19, and my daughter is 20. And
Oh.
yeah, and so, you know, I've always taken upon myself to kind of be the patriarch of my family, right? Because my dad is not really involved in my life. He lives, he lives in on another continent, right? And my siblings always looked up to me, but I also enjoyed being a leader. I also enjoyed being a good older brother. I also enjoy being a good son or a good uncle and a good dad. Like, I pride myself on that. And the reason I mention all this stuff is because at a very young age, I knew how important that the way that I carried myself and the way that I poured into my family, doing laundry, cooking food, taking out the garbage, walking my brother and my sister to the bus stop, being on the bus with them, teaching them how to read maps, all these different things. Teaching my kids the same thing, teaching them independence, teaching them confidence and strength and how to think about the world. All that comes is possible because I've taken care of myself. Because I put myself first. I know it doesn't sound like I put myself first, but I have. I've done all the things I need to do to make sure I am optimized at the highest level. Now, of course, I have a good time. I have fun. I have cheat days. I'll have a glass of wine. I'll have a brownie. I'll have a hamburger. I'll have the typical US treats that we like to have here in America, right? Every country, every place has their things they like to indulge in. Well, we have ours too. And so I definitely enjoy myself on occasion, but I'm regimented, I'm disciplined, and I have to earn that. I think what bothers me a little bit is that we like to have fun first and then pay for it later. Yeah, I actually like to pay for it first and then have my fun second because I've earned it. And that discipline has been really well as an example for my family. And so, as kind of a leader, it's important for me that I take care of myself because I can't take care of everyone else if I'm not healthy. And the main motivation behind what I do is there's a lot of people that are in my position that are helping someone, taking care of someone, raising multiple kids, taking care of a parent. Who knows? Maybe at work they're taking care of people. What I'm talking about is not hard to understand. There are a lot of people that without them, many things would fall apart, right? And so the
Yeah.
reason I build the things that I build and why I think the insights are so important is that I want people to understand how being optimized mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, how that can affect the quality of your work deliverables, but also the quality of life around the people that count on you. So that's really the mindset behind everything.
Yeah, no, that's really, impressive. I'm glad that how you're trying to connect everything from the ground roots of it, and where we come from, and that then how that ultimately shapes us, right? So a bit of a technical perspective to the things now. Femi, how does AI and machine learning transform the way we assess physical potential?
One of the things that we did when we first created HealthReel is that we knew that to really understand somebody's fitness level, right? To really understand adiposity, which is body fat, right? Like how much unnecessary weight are we carrying? What's the ideal weight that we should be based on our gender and our age, right? Age and gender matter. You can't ask a 37-year-old female to have the same body composition as a 22-year-old male. That's completely incongruent. The ranges for healthy body composition are completely tethered to age and gender. As we age, there's a natural accumulation of body fat, which is relatively healthy. And each kind of, and we've actually, in a linear manner, have created exactly what those data points are. So within HealthReel, that data point lives. So we can project that on somebody to the day, to literally to the day of their age. And to get to that information, there's a data point that I call the golden data point, which is body fat percentage. We live in a world now where a lot of people are consumed with BMI. BMI is a horrible data point, by the way. It's terrible. It speaks nothing to adiposity or body fat percentage. All it looks at is your height and your weight. Two people can be the exact same height and weight, and one person can be obese and the other can be extremely healthy. But you wouldn't know that with BMI. Body fat would tell you that, but BMI would not tell you that. And that expression that you just made, a lot of people don't realize that. That's why BMI is not an important data point in what we do. Body fat percentage is the data point that we use. And people in the fitness space understand this. So this is not a secret. This is actually pretty well known, and it's more well known now than ever. But obviously, it's hard. I can't compare my knowledge to somebody who's more nascent. That's not a fair comparison. But what I can tell you is I do speak to very nascent people in the space, and body fat percentage has become the data point of choice for anyone that's serious about their fitness. This is a fact. So to get that data point and to do it in an easy manner, we needed to use computer vision and neural networks to do that. We needed a video of a person. And there's requirements for the video: distance, lighting, skin tone, all these different things that go into it. I won't bore you with the details, but trust me, we went down the rabbit hole because when we first started this, I had no idea how the lighting in the room and the skin tone of a person and the shape of somebody, these things are completely different person to person. They're different the way that a fingerprint is different. Like I don't care if you have a twin sister. She's not shaped exactly like you, even if you're the same height and weight. Like you're going to be different. And if I have a twin brother, this is the same concept. We need to get information from people that is going to be analyzed through a video assessment. So we created that. We built that. We created some IP around using smart devices and the cameras in smart devices, and then using a neural network to assess that video, understanding that there are android and gynoid body types. All that refers to is where you carry body fat, looking at where your body fat is, because in this video, the camera stays still, but you just do a 360-degree turn. And then we already have your age, gender, height, weight. We already know your activity level, because on the onboarding process, there are things that we ask you early on, things that you'll never have to input again. And there are things you'll have to input each time that you do assessment. But the real use of AI is not in the recommendations. It's not in the guidance. The real use of AI is in the analysis. And the future of AI, and the thing that we're working on right now with Code District, is actually a component called HealthG. HealthG is integrated into HealthReel, and it is that Chat GPT health augmented co-pilot or assistant that remembers all your HealthReel data, and then it starts to learn about you. It starts to learn about your preferences when it comes to food and exercise and your data, and it'll share it with you and remind you and give you guidance if you have questions on how should I exercise today? How many calories should I eat today? How many grams of protein should I eat today? How many grams of fat should I eat today? So those are the two areas where AI is really going to have a massive impact. It's the analysis, and then it's the kind of fluid, real seeming interaction and guidance. So it's really the bookends, like the beginning and the end, and there's really no end, right? But my point is that there's the onboarding and the analysis, there's the guidance, and there's the report, and then there's the interaction. So the whole process is bookend by AI. If you think about like an Oreo cookie, right? You have the white of the Oreo in the middle, and you have the kind of the chocolate Oreo cookies on the front, on the top, and the bottom. Well, that's how I look at the use of AI in HealthReel. I've never used that analogy before. I hope it works.
So, Femi, how have you applied NASA's health analytics algorithm to real world health assessments?
I need to give you the whole NASA story so you understand like how this all came together. So while I was at Hopkins working on my capstone, one of my professors basically said, "Hey, are you familiar with technology transfer?" I said, "No, I don't know what technology transfer is." Technology transfer, there's labs all throughout the planet. You name a country, I'm sure there's a tech transfer opportunity with either a university or some lab. I am blessed to live in the US, where we have probably one of the best tech transfer platforms and programs through NASA on the planet, right? And so there is a NASA lab called Goddard Space Flight Center, which is about 45 minutes from my house. It's in between DC and Baltimore, where I live in Baltimore. And they have a an amalgamation of different IP hardware and software that was created for the space program, but was ultimately either not used for the space program or was removed from the space program. And that technology was put into a portfolio. And so while I was at Hopkins, there was a single data point under their kind of health and wellness, I guess you could say, a box of IP that they had, which wasn't a ton. Because if you think about all the things that NASA can do, health and fitness and wellness might be one of the smaller things. Although obviously it's really important for astronauts. But this data point was called corrected BMI. So notice the word corrected BMI. Because BMI is so ubiquitous globally, they wanted to use BMI because they knew that if anyone looked at BMI, they'd have an understanding of like what like overweight is, what healthy is, what too light is, and kind of like what the optimal zone is, right? I think the optimal BMI, I believe, is 18.5 to 23.9, I believe, something like, I think that's the optimal zone. So what made this data point interesting, one, it was from NASA. So if I was able to acquire it, I get to say I'm working with NASA, which obviously I did. Two, it is comprised, body fat percentage is one of the data points. So
Yeah.
if BMI was to be useful, it would be useful if body fat percentage had influence on the scoring, which it does. So in 2018, when I acquired it, I felt that it would be really useful for an audience that really doesn't understand body fat percentage. And the corrected BMI data point would be in the report as just another data point on body composition. So you'd have your current body fat percentage, you'd have corrected BMI, and you'd have your body weight. So you'd have numerous data points that would tell you where you are. And then we would have a recommendation that would tell you ideally where you need to be. The truth of the matter is that you really only need body fat percentage. Like the corrected BMI is amazing because it shows my ability to partner with an amazing organization like NASA. And there are some people that obviously would appreciate the BMI metric because that's what they know. But ultimately, I imagine at some point in the future, BMI will become a relatively antiquated data point. It'll become relatively useless because it doesn't quantify health the way that it should. And so uh, that is how I ended up partnering with NASA. But if you fast forward to now, um, I was the first athlete ever to sign a NASA technology transfer partnership agreement, first ever do it. And so what I did is before COVID, I started introducing NASA to other athletic organizations. And we started doing what's called these athletic boot camps, where we'd bring athletes in and we would tell them about tech transfer, hoping that they would do what I did. They'd become a partner. So I worked with NASA on that. COVID hit and everything stopped for a while. But the last year, I've been speaking to the director of tech transfer here in Greenbelt at Goddard, and I basically and I do a lot of consulting work and a lot of business and strategic development work. And I was able to convince him to allow me to become a NASA consultant. And the goal here is to shine a light and create events, but also bring in partnership opportunities through the Space Act, where US institutions, researchers, universities, entrepreneurs, for-profits and nonprofits would go through the process that I went through. They become a tech transfer partner. So my relationship with NASA is twofold. One, I am a tech transfer partner. I have corrected BMI in my digital health assessment tool. It's a featured data point. Simultaneously, I am a consultant for NASA. I am helping them bring awareness to tech transfer. I'm helping them create events, but I'm also helping them onboard or other organizations to get more involved in tech transfer on multiple levels. So that's my affiliation with NASA.
So, Femi, what can sports science learn from space technology for performance optimization?
Yeah, so it's interesting because we know that there are definitely problems because our bodies have evolutionarily evolved based on gravity and the things that are on planet Earth, right? So when you get somebody into a zero G environment for an extended amount of time, or you try to create artificial gravity, we don't really know what the long-term ramifications for that could be. When I say long-term, I mean like living off planet on Mars or living on a spaceship for a decade. Like we don't know that information yet. So I can't really speak to what that means because we just haven't done enough to figure it out. My guess is that, and these are things that I don't necessarily know for certain, but conversations that I've had at a very high level is what would it be like to give birth in space? What would it be like to give birth on Mars? What would that mean for the evolution of man and mankind when you start changing all the circumstances that we've evolved under? My guess is it's going to be a big deal, right? So not only are we talking about the evolution and the effects of humans on a genetic level, but then we're also talking about the grown up individuals that will have to be in that environment for an extended amount of time. And we know that they've put protocols in place for nutrition. They've put protocols in space for recovery. They put protocols in space for exercise and fitness and maintaining bone density and muscle mass. But the biggest, most prudent issue is definitely the metabolic effects of space, the issues with muscle retention in space and loss of muscle mass, and bone density. For sure, those are the biggest short-term problems. And I don't think we have long-term solutions just yet beyond, the things that astronauts are doing right now, which is obviously focused on making sure that they can maintain bone density or bone loss to a minimum and muscle mass loss to a minimum. But we're in the very nascent early days of that discovery process, to be honest. Like that, for my area of expertise and the knowledge that I have, that's about as much as I can share about it, and that's about as much as I know about it. I wish I had something more groundbreaking to share, but I know what the challenges are, and we're more in the challenge discovery space, in my opinion, than the solutions. Although there are some short-term solutions right now.
You mentioned challenges, so I would like to deep dive into challenges a bit more that you have faced in translating advanced research into consumer friendly applications.
Yeah, you know what? What's interesting is that sometimes less is more. I would say that when we're talking about like on planet Earth, right? Like we'll move away from the space stuff right now because honestly, I can't really say any more than I've already said about that. And if I do try, I'll probably sound silly. But in regard to our fitness, our metabolisms, insulin sensitivity, adiposity and obesity, heart health, brain health, the connection to that with the brain and gut biome, right? Like we know all this stuff. There's really not, and we're still learning things on a very esoteric level for sure, but I don't think that we need to know more than we know in regard to applying things that absolutely work. Like, we know we need to eat less trash, we need to eat less processed food, we need to move more, we need to be mentally stimulated, we need to be disconnected from devices at times. And you're hearing it from a person who loves tech. I think that yoga, and by the way, I do hot yoga every day. I kind of was raised in the Bikram model of yoga and hot yoga. I'm not a fan of the individual, but I am a fan of the art. You know what I mean? I want to make that clear because I can separate the art from the artist very easily. But to me, the research has already given us guidance on what we need to be doing. The trick is, which I think is what you're getting to, the crux of it is, how do we make it digestible? And I mean that in a figurative way and a literal way. How do we take what we know and help people digest it and deploy it? That's going to always be the problem. This goes back to the dilemma of art versus action, right? It can be artful, but is it actionable? That's always the dilemma that we're going to be facing. And I think that when we get into the words research and advanced research, you just lost 80% of people right there. Like they don't want to hear about any of that. They don't even want to know. Humans do not want options. They want like 2 options when it comes to stuff. Is it going to work? And am I going to get the result that I want? I'm talking about fitness right now. I mean, some people might want options and other things, but in general, when you present people with 10 different solutions, they're going to be like, I have no idea what to do with that. Why are you giving me 10 solutions? You can't tell me all 10 of these are equally the same. Give me the best 2 or 3 options. Tell me how much they cost. Tell me what I can expect to happen, and then I'll make a choice. Like literally, if you do this, this should happen. If you buy this, this should happen. If you buy this, this is what this is going to do. Don't ask them open-ended questions. Give them the information and the outcome as best you can. And I think that's really the difficulty that I find in a lot of things right now. When people bring things to me, I want to know what it is. I want to know why I should be interested in it. I want to know what it does. I want to know how much time it's going to take me to learn it. And I want to know what the outcome is going to be. And I want a recommendation too. I want you to tell me what you think is the best thing. It's amazing how many people will go through a whole exercise, and at the end of it, they'll just lay everything out and be like, so what do you think? Like, what do you mean? What do I think? You know my issues. You have all my data. Tell me what you think is the best thing for me. Tell me why you think this is the best thing for me. And if you can't tell me one thing, give me 1 or 2, maybe 3 maximum, and why I should choose one of these 3. Like maybe I just want to get started, and getting started with the base model of something is an easy introduction, and you get used to the system, you get used to the UI and the UX. And then by perusing and redundancy, eventually you're like, well, I'm curious about this feature. And then if you stay on, then you're, well, I'm curious about this feature. Get them in the door. Don't throw a million things at them. Just get them in the door first, and then slowly but gradually move them up that vertically integrated ladder of things, because the truth of the matter is I may go to Whole Foods for grass-fed beef, but I walk around and I go, oh, wait, they have organic lotion here. Oh, they have fresh fruit here. Oh my God, they have all, like, I walked in the door for one thing, but I left with 10. That's what a good business is. You have somebody walk in for one thing and you end up doing multiple things well, but just get them hooked on the one thing first. And then let's work on the other stuff. To me, that's the challenge in regard to melding product market fit and advanced research. Product market fit and advanced research are connected in my mind through kind of like the economics and the psychology of people, right? The money and then the psychological kind of analysis or assessment or the value or the utility they see in said product.
But then, I bet that you mentioned not eating trash food. You must have difficult time telling your kids not to do that.
I actually don't. They're at an age now where my son's an athlete, my daughter's a model. So
Oh,
their bodies are very important to their work. And they've grown up around me, they've grown up around their mom, and they see how serious. The best thing you can do for a kid is just lead by example. You don't even have to say a word. Just let them watch you every day for 18 years, do what you do. That's going to teach them everything they need to know. You can say whatever you want. I don't care what you say. I care what you do. I want to see what you do. There's a lot of people that say a lot of things, but do they do what they say? No one's perfect, right? Like, we're all going to make our mistakes, but I think that at the end of the day, we all revert back to our factory setting. We all revert back to where we're comfortable. And I think that it takes a lot of work to get to a place where you're disciplined and that your normal is a high level function. Like there's the easy normal where we know most people want to live in that easy normal. Like, well, I got to go to work. I'm going to get up. I'm going to take a shower. Well, you could have got up an hour earlier and went to the gym. You could have got up an hour earlier and went for a walk. You know what I mean? You could have got up an hour, or you could have went to bed an hour earlier to perform better. Or you could have meal prepped and taken that to work with you. Or you could have made something healthier so that when you come home, you already have it in the fridge. Like, we tend to move from action to action without any thought for how do I streamline this and make this easier and better so that I can reclaim more time, I can reclaim a healthier lifestyle, and I can be healthier. If you're waiting for the moment that you need something to take action, you've already missed the opportunity to optimize stuff. It's too late. You've got to be thinking about tomorrow, yesterday. You know what I mean? I know
yeah.
that's what I believe.
In this entire conversation, I'm getting a lot of advices and thoughtful things coming out from you that can be really helpful and insightful for the people who must be listening to this. Can we talk about, with AI evolving rapidly, where do you see the biggest breakthroughs in health, or maybe we can focus more on the sports analytics side of it?
Yeah, so the biggest breakthroughs that I don't think that we talk a lot about is probably going to be in cancer and cancer research. There have been medicinal breakthroughs with like GLP-1s and GLP-2s. That's obviously not AI related, but I still think that some of the medicines and solutions will be AI driven, right? The ability to study and project millions of outcomes simultaneously with the use of AI it's already happening, but I probably can't even comprehend. And then you add quantum computing to it, which is probably another 4 or 5, 10 years away. All this stuff is going to be accelerated. And I think that the ability to give people really substantive, personalized information in real time that is completely tethered to them is an impactful, amazing aha moment for people when you see that light bulb go off, like, oh my God, this is me. Like, this is my information. It's not like something that fits everyone else. It just fits me. It's mine, right? I think that's highly motivational. And I think AI is only going to continue to drive that individuality. It's only going to continue to drive that personalization. And it's only going to continue to find solutions for problems that we have not found solutions for just yet. So I think those are the areas, the real big things and the real small day-to-day things. I think that's where AI is really going to make its imprint going forward.
And do you think that AI-driven health monitoring is going to become as mainstream as wearable tech?
Absolutely. It's going to be integrated. It's all going to be one experience. Like right now, my watch, actually, this watch that I'm wearing, I'm not sure if it can do it, but blood pressure is not like there's watches that can do blood pressure right now. There are devices that can tell you your blood pressure. We already know heart rate variability is in the mix, resting heart rate, active heart rate, um, uh, metabolic burn rates. So, active metabolic rate and resting metabolic rate, these are the amount of calories that you burn at rest and act like these things are already happening, right? So that is the real time kind of health metric data that you can be given at any moment, right? And to me, when you take the kind of real time monitoring and you take the kind of weekly or monthly or quarterly guidance that you give somebody, and it's really on them, like our reporting with HealthReel, it doesn't make sense to do it more than once a week because data needs to change for the actions to change. And if you're not changing anything, then the data is not going to change. So if you're deploying a new fitness strategy or a new diet and a new recovery strategy, hopefully all three at the same time, because there's obviously a synergistic effect when you employ multiple things that are good at the same time. It may make sense to do it, once a week, but once a week, once a month, et cetera, bi-weekly. And then you take the real time things that you're doing and you overlay all these things together. The real time data is the long term output. Like that's what it is. It's all tethered to the other, right? They're not separate from the other. So to me, the experience should be seamless. It should all be one thing. But the problem is the bifurcation and the segmentation in fitness and in health and in longevity and mental health. Like everyone wants to just do one thing. Well, to actually improve people, you got to do it all at the same time. You can't disconnect people from their mental health, from their emotional health, their spiritual and their physical health. It all has to be happening at the same time. And I use the word spiritual very loosely because spiritual health is for the individual. That can be rooted or tethered to religion, or it can just be a feeling or an idea that I'm connected to something larger than myself, and my community is my spiritual guide. Like there's a lot of different ways to look at spirituality. So I just want the audience to know that I'm not defining that for anybody. I'm just telling you like the way that I look at it, but you need all four quadrants to be addressed: mental, emotional, physical, spiritual. And there are data points that are tied to all four of those. Now that's a whole nother conversation for another day, probably, but you should be tracking all this at the same time, in real time, in the future, and being guided on it in real time in the future. And I think that will happen.
But Femi, two sides of the one coin, and you've talked about, art, and if we talk about, um, can we really trust AI, with our data? And there have been a lot of noise with the data breaches and the recent happening with the DeepSeek, right? So, in your opinion, is that something that we can really do? But it also even doesn't matter because people are already doing it. I mean, I would talk to AI rather than talking to a person sitting next to me and asking them things and not going on Google anymore. So, what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I mean, AI is only going to be as good as we build it, but there are definitely things that are not. What I don't want to happen is that the people's fears get out front of the facts, right? There have been studies of efficacy and accuracy on what AI can do, and it's pretty good. And it's better than humans. Like right now, like should I ask you a question about what I should eat, or should I ask OpenAI and ChatGPT? I'm pretty sure ChatGPT is going to tell me more than you know,
Yeah.
right? And if you do the math around that, now I am an expert in this space, and I'm sure there's things that ChatGPT and OpenAI and all the different whether it's DeepSeek or any other model, there's probably things it's going to be able to retain and know that I may have forgotten already. You know what I mean? And so to answer your question, yes, we can absolutely trust it. And it's happening right now. It's already happening, like you said. So
Yeah.
data breaches are a completely different conversation. Trust and data breach and all that stuff, like people are always going to try to game the system. A lot of people try to talk negatively about cryptocurrency, particularly Bitcoin. And I'm a fan of Bitcoin, and I see the utility of Bitcoin, and Bitcoin's not going anywhere. There's no I don't think that once a digital asset, or I'm sorry, once a financial asset crosses the $2 trillion barrier, it has never gone away. Bitcoin's already crossed that. It's not going away. So people want to bury their head in the sand and pretend it's not a store of value, and it's not going to continue to revolutionize digital assets in our monetary system. They're just telling themselves a lie. Because you don't have to like something, but you have to understand that it's going to be part of the system. Like, it's going to be here. It's not going anywhere. I think what ends up happening is that we have a fear component, we have a lack of understanding component, and then we kind of meld that into completely eliminating something from a toolkit of items that we probably should have in our toolkit. So am I going to stop using AI? Am I going to stop using technology because I'm worried about someone stealing my data? No, I'm not. I mean, the bottom line is that your driving information, your health insurance information, your car insurance information, your banking, your consumption of television and the internet, it's all tech. It's all, I mean, all of any of it can be breached. So to me, that's not a reason to not use something, because all you're going to do is put yourself in a situation where you're wasting time while everybody else is trying to collateralize it or get some time back. So to me, AI is definitely part of the long-term strategy and plan. AI should absolutely be trusted, but everything has to be verified, right? At the end of the day, like, the more esoteric and complicated the questions that you ask AI, the more likely it's going to be wrong. And there are some very simple things that AI also gets wrong. Like, we know that, right? Like, for whatever reason, every time I use Gemini, it doesn't remember my name. I don't know why it doesn't remember my name, but it doesn't remember my name, which is, you would think like that should be one of the easiest things to do, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, but my point is that technology is accelerating. AI is accelerating. It's going to be embedded at every level and everything that we do. So I encourage people to not be fearful, but to get knowledgeable. That's the best thing that you can do.
What advice would you give to entrepreneurs and innovators looking to merge AI with human performance industries?
Yeah, I think that definitely use AI. And one of the things that I'm going to give you two answers to this. The first answer is that I love my chat feature with ChatGPT as a sounding board, like helping me brainstorm and come up with a roadmap for implementation, and also discovery. Like, it is the best for that. It's the best for, I have an idea, this is what I'm trying to build. What's the regulatory situation I should be thinking about? How should I go about features? What would be important for UI and UX? What's the development time? What's the cost? Like, it's really good at that. So if you have an idea, I would absolutely, before I even went to another person, I would, and definitely do your research online. But ChatGPT is amazing for kind of whiteboarding and soundboarding a concept and really coming up with a plan, a strategy, an elevator pitch. That's the first thing that I would do. And the question that you asked me, right, for innovators and entrepreneurs, I don't know where they are in their entrepreneurial or innovation journey. Maybe they're further along, but what I'm saying from an advice perspective, I think it still stands up. I mean, you can do this with your co-founders and other people on your team, but it might even be better to start with a chat GPT and then come to them with like, hey, this is what I did, bullet pointed out, share it then at that point, because then you can kind of show that you've really put some time into your thought process. The next thing I would say in regard to, kind of using AI is that not only can it help you come up with a roadmap and help you understand like where the barriers to entry are and kind of doing that like strength, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, that SWOT analysis. It can help you find things locally. Like, you can literally ask it questions about who's doing this here, who's my competition in this environment, who built something like this, right? So there's just so many different ways to get a lot of information really quickly. I think that ChatGPT and these large language models are really good for that. But in regard to the specificity of a business, or if you're creating an app or something like that, you don't always have to use AI the way that I'm using it. Maybe AI is not even a requirement for what you're doing. Maybe regression or some other type of analysis is good enough for what you're doing. But my assumption is that whether it comes to like a customer service component, a revenue and projections component, my guess is AI is going to have some value in regard to helping you with your decision making. I'm speaking at a very high level because there's just too many businesses and too many, innovations and ideas that people have for me to give anything, more specific than that.
All right. So the most interesting question: what's the hardest lesson you've learned, in your career?
Wow, the hardest lessons I've learned. That's a good one. There are 5 traits that I think every leader and every human should have. Like I'm very confident about this. And to me, if you can embody these 5 traits, the chances of you building partnerships and relationships that are not transactional but are collaborative, are a lot more likely. First, you're authentic. Second, you're positive. Third, you show high character. Fourth, you show humility. And fifth, you're graceful. If you can embody those 5 things, to me, you'll eliminate a lot of problems before they even start. And a lot of the problems that we face, because at the end of the day, we still need people to build our dreams. We still need people to help us with something at some point. Unless you just have so much money, none of that matters. But that's not the way I like to operate. I don't ever want people to feel like I'm just going to buy this, I'm going to buy them, I'm going to buy that. Like, that's just a terrible way to do business. And that doesn't put out goodwill. And that's not good karma, in my opinion. Like, I do think it matters. I think the energy that you put out matters. So when I look at people that are successful, they're always authentic, they're positive, they have high character, they're humble, and they're graceful. And the last thing I'll say, just to add to that, what made them that way is that they're survivors, right? Any trauma they've been through, any adversity they've been through, they've survived it. They've assessed every difficult situation they've ever been in. They've learned from that situation. They've deployed what they've learned from that information, and then they've shared that information with other people as well. So that 5-step process of authenticity, positivity, character, humility, and grace, it only comes through failure and trauma and adversity. And when it comes to failure, trauma, and adversity, you have to survive it, assess it, learn from it, deploy it, and share it. So to me, those lessons, all the lessons that I've had, all the things that I didn't learn the first time, they came around again. And they said, you didn't learn the first time. Let me show you again. You didn't learn. Okay. You didn't learn the second time. Let me show you again. And until I learned, things are difficult. And then not only did I have to learn from those things, but I had to make those character traits part of who I am. And I still mess those things up. I have something on my fridge that says, be the thermostat, not the thermometer, right? Thermostats set the temperature. Thermometers move with the temperature in the room, right? You don't want to be a thermometer. You don't want to be up and down, hot and cold. That's not who you want to be. You want to set the tone and set the temperature as a leader and have people meet and match your energy and say, okay, this is how we're doing this, how we're going to get things done. And that all comes from those 5 character traits. Like, thermostats understand what it means to be authentic, positive, to have character, to be humble, and to be graceful. And the truth of the matter is that when you interact with people, you've got to be curious, you've got to be connected, and you've got to be collaborative. And then only last can you be confrontational. You cannot be, you cannot start with confrontation. And I think a lot of people make mistakes. They start a relationship out with confrontation. Well, I saw that you did this. Why did you do that? It's like, you don't even know me. You haven't showed me that you're curious about me. You haven't showed me that you want to be collaborative. You're definitely not connected to who I am, but you want to be confrontational. I just think that's the wrong way to go about things. And so these kind of what I call the 4 C's, the 5 traits of leadership, the survival rubric that I just mentioned, like, these are all things that are very easy for me to talk about. And I do a lot of keynote speaking and I do a lot of development and leadership work, as you can tell, probably. I try to make it simple for people, because if you make things too complicated, it goes back to that advanced research word. Nobody wants to hear about that. They just want to know what they need to know.
Yeah, and people always they learn from their experiences. You can advise them, you can tell them things, but until they are put into that situation and learn something from themselves, they're not going to bookmark it. They're going to keep repeating that. But then,
Yep.
that's what makes us human,
They're going to
right?
think it's, oh, that's not going to happen to me. That's not me.
Yeah.
And then before you know it, oh, no, that is you. Yeah, that is
Yeah.
you. It happened. It just happened to you. You know what I mean? So are you going to adapt and adjust and be dynamic, or are you going to be static and repeat the same mistakes? And unfortunately, we got a lot of people around here that haven't learned.
I'm absolutely honored to have done this with you. And thank you so much for sharing all of your insights, with our listeners today. And I am glad that you did it with us. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem, Rabia. Thank you.